8:19 p.m. St. Ridge. ER erupted as paramedics rushed in a wounded Navy SEAL, half conscious. I caught bleeding through a shredded tactical shirt. Doctors closed in, shouting orders, but the SEAL suddenly snapped awake. Wild, terrified, refusing their hands. "Don't touch me," he roared, kicking off monitors. Even security froze. This wasn't panic. This was combat mode. A rookie nurse stepped forward, tiny, soft-spoken, overlooked by everyone. The kind interns joked about behind her back. She shouldn't have gotten anywhere near him. But she did, and when she whispered 6 quiet syllables only 3 men on Earth knew. The SEAL froze. All the rage drained from his face. He slowly lowered himself back onto the bed and whispered, trembling, "Mom, is that really you?" And in one heartbeat, the entire ER learned the rookie nurse they dismissed was the only reason his unit ever made it home alive. Before we begin, take 2 seconds to comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe. It truly keeps these stories alive. Thank you. Now, let's return to St. Ridge. 10:47 p.m. wasn't supposed to be mayhem. It wasn't supposed to be crimson, ripped equipment, or the sound a man makes when agony meets recollection in the worst manner. But tonight, the automatic emergency entrance blasted open, with paramedics bellowing over a stretcher dripping scarlet. A Navy SEAL, identified only by the faint trident patch, still clinging to his shredded combat shirt, gasped against the oxygen mask, half conscious, half ready to battle a conflict all over again. Gunshot wound, entry shoulder, exit flank, blood pressure unstable, cardiac guarded. Paramedics rattled codes, statistics, and language civilians barely understood. But physicians didn't hear. They witnessed the uniform, the scars, the battlefield tattoos, and suddenly every resident surgeon desired to be the champion. Clamp it. Prepare operating room or not, he requires trauma section. Move. Someone sedate him. The SEAL snapped awake, not confused, not medicated, trained. He shoved the oxygen away and bellowed with a force that shook the sterile barriers. "Don't touch me." Screens crashed to the floor. An intravenous pole struck tile. Security mid-shift sandwich still in hand, sprinted. "This man is dangerous," one physician hissed under his breath. "No soldier awakens like that unless he's burned by recollections." They circled him. White coats, latex gloves, arrogance. But the SEAL wasn't witnessing them. He was witnessing something burning, distant, buried, sand, night vision. A radio code murmured through static. He kicked off the compression straps, teeth clenched so hard a vein pulsed down his neck. "No restraints," security commanded. "He's in battlefield psychosis. Retreat." And for a moment, everyone did. Residents murmured, "Another veteran with trauma. Someone contact psychiatric." Wild canine training. Typical military. They thought they were quiet. He heard every word. Then the space shifted. A caregiver nobody noticed walked in. Not a surgeon, not command, not decorated rookie badge, auburn hair in a simple bun. Soft expression, soft tone, soft presence, the sort the emergency department chewed and spit out. Claire Morgan, carrying nothing more threatening than a tray of pain management medications. She didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't even appear impressed by the hurricane of physicians arguing over protocols. She just stepped into the eye of it. "Morgan, get out of there. You're not cleared for combative trauma. This is not a student situation." She didn't examine any of them. She examined him. The SEAL's torso heaved. Perspiration streaked war paint down his cheek. His hand twitched toward where a weapon used to be. Claire didn't retreat. She murmured, 6 syllables. Quiet, precise, deadly accurate. A linguistic fingerprint tied to a single classified squad. And every physician, every caregiver, every security officer paused, not because they understood the words, but because he did. The SEAL froze, his digits unclenched, his shoulders dropped. The battlefield glaze in his gaze shattered. Slowly, impossibly, He lowered himself back onto the stretcher, chin trembling, gaze locked on hers. "Ah, Doc Morgan," he breathed, the name cracked in the space between them. "You. It's really you." Whispers burst open like a dam. Doc Morgan. She's just a caregiver, isn't she? What is occurring right now? Claire felt heat crawl up her throat. Not embarrassment, recognition, recollection, unwanted, unburied. The seal reached for her wrist. Not forceful, grateful. "You rescued us," he murmured, tone shaking now. Not from agony, but reverence. Physicians exchanged glances. What did they just witness? Security appeared embarrassed to be holding tasers and zip ties against a man who just saluted a caregiver with his gaze. Claire swallowed. Her tone when she used it barely rose above a breath. "Don't execute that. Not here." But he did. He sat straighter, ignoring his bleeding flank, and saluted her anyway. Not military formality, recognition, debt, history too heavy to speak aloud. Residents stared like the floor had opened. Someone muttered, "Did he just salute a caregiver?" But he wasn't finished. His hand dropped, shaking, not from injury but recollection. "Ma'am," he murmured, gaze shining. Who else made it out? The question hung like smoke. Claire didn't answer. Couldn't. Her pulse thudded once. Fallen, broken radios' names erased off rosters. 3 bodies she couldn't rescue. The space didn't comprehend what they just stepped into. They thought this was a trauma situation. It wasn't. It was a resurrection. Behind her, Dr. Collins, sure arrogant spine of the emergency department, scoffed loud enough for everyone to hear. "This drama is unnecessary, Sergeant. You're in shock. Nurse Morgan, step aside." But the SEAL turned to him, ice replacing moisture. "You so much as touch me before she clears it," he rasped. "I'll walk out bleeding." Collins blanched. Because this wasn't a threat. This was a soldier stating a certainty. Claire didn't flinch, didn't brag, didn't correct anyone. She just stated, "Let me witness the injury." Even Dr. Collins went silent. She peeled back soaked gauze, took one glance, and every drop of pigment left her expression. It wasn't the injury. It was how it was executed. Where angle placement. She recognized the signature, the squad tactic, the ambush style. Only one group used it. Only one mission classified it. Only one file erased it. She murmured, barely audible, "No, not again." The SEAL's gaze widened. "You remember," he stated, not asking, knowing. She nodded. "Once. Not rookie, not trainee, not sweet Morgan, who works late shifts. Ghost of a medic who was never supposed to survive." The space's chaos dimmed. No beeping screens, no barking surgeons, no rustling scrubs, just truth finally unmasked. The SEAL leaned closer, tone cracking. "Claire, who else survived?" She opened her mouth, her history, pressing against her ribs like shrapnel. But before she could answer, the injured SEAL suddenly arched, gasping hard. Screens spiked, crimson surged, sirens blared, and the emergency department snapped back alive. Vitals crashing. Code, trauma. Get respiratory now. Claire grabbed gauze, pressure, assessment all at once. Muscle recollection from an existence she buried. But as she anchored his pulse, hands steady, gaze locked on his, she comprehended exactly what the next words would be. Words she never desired to hear again. Collins bellowed them. "He's losing pressure. If we don't open that shoulder vessel, he'll lose the limb." And every gaze swung to her as if suddenly remembering. She was the only one he trusted to rescue it. The SEAL locked onto her fading gaze, murmuring through agony, "Ma'am, please don't permit them to take my limb." The SEAL rested on the bed. No straps, no restraints, just breathing hard, gaze locked on the one individual who could maintain him from spiraling again. Claire Morgan. She stood beside him, hands clasped loosely, posture quiet enough to disappear, steady enough to hold the entire space in place. Nobody dared speak, not after what they just witnessed. A man trained to endure interrogation, capture, dehydration, starvation, crimson loss, unravelled by the touch of highly paid surgeons, but calmed by 6 murmured syllables from a caregiver they barely noticed. Dr. Bennett cleared his throat first, the sound clipped, embarrassed, still attempting to hold on to authority. "Whatever code word you used, Nurse Morgan," he muttered, "it doesn't change the fact that he requires surgical clearance. He possesses ballistic trauma." "Internal, not ballistic," Claire stated softly, every head turned. "He was struck by concussive mortar debris, fragmentation, not a direct projectile. That's why the bleed pattern is lateral instead of deep." Bennett blinked. Excuse me, but how would you comprehend that?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to because the SEAL did. "In Baghdad," he rasped, tone raw but proud. "Doc Morgan was the one who patched half the squad after we got struck at the communication tower. She didn't require scans then, either. She read injuries the manner some generals read maps." The word doc struck the space like a fist. Not caregiver, not rookie, not intern, not quiet woman, doc. It was Bennett who stepped back now, uncertainty bending his spine. But Claire didn't stand taller, didn't hint at satisfaction, didn't flash any pride. She just adjusted the SEAL's intravenous with gentle practiced precision. "Your vitals are stabilizing," she murmured to him. His jaw flexed. "My vitals stabilize when you inform them to. Same as before." The screens beeped steadily behind him. Not perfect, but obedient. She nodded once and turned to depart to slip back into the background, the manner she always did. But the SEAL reached suddenly, digits wrapping around her wrist, not gripping with force, but recognition. "Don't walk away this occasion." The space held still. Claire's breath caught, not from terror but recollection. Ancient sand in her lungs, ancient radiostatic in her ears. A field medic's pulse against a dirt floor while helicopters circled overhead with no place to land. Dr. Bennett attempted to interject again. "Look, whatever field history you two share, we still require." "No," the SEAL snapped, a fire returning to his tone. "You require her. She doesn't require you." Gasps scattered. "You don't talk to the chief trauma surgeon that manner." But he wasn't talking as a casualty. He was talking as a man who'd watched Claire Morgan lay herself across a bleeding comrade while artillery fell so close it shook the ground under her knees. Claire gently released her wrist from his grasp. "I'm here. I just don't execute command posts anymore." "You never did," he stated quietly. "You just maintained us breathing when command forgot we existed." That silenced even Bennett. A young resident murmured near the supply cart. "She's not really a rookie, is she?" Claire forced a thin smile. "I departed that existence behind. I departed him behind." The SEAL's gaze softened, not with pity, but with the variety of respect men carve into memorial stones. "He perished a champion, Claire. Your partner didn't fall because you failed." "Halt," she murmured, and for the first occasion, Bennett, the residents, even security realized this wasn't a story she polished for attention. This was an injury deeper than the one on the stretcher. The SEAL eased back, agony threading through his tone. "I thought the intelligence was incorrect when they stated all medics were killed in action that evening. I prayed they were incorrect. Turns out they were." Claire stepped back without answering, because if she spoke, every brick she stacked between her history and her pulse might crumble. Bennett, sensing control slip again, cleared his throat. "We require imaging now, and I require to comprehend exactly what that code means. It means she's the reason I'm not a name on a barrier. The SEAL stated it means when the backup convoy was 22 miles off course and communications blacked out and command comprehended we'd be surrounded, the individual who dragged 6 of us through debris and gunfire wasn't a SEAL, wasn't a captain." His gaze flicked toward Claire. "Hey, she was our ghost medic with no extraction clearance and no evacuation window. She stayed when even heaven turned away." No one moved. Even the ventilators paused in reverence. Bennett swallowed harshly. And her partner? The SEAL answered because she couldn't. He shielded her when they opened fire on our evacuation point. He pushed her behind the last barrier, still standing. Claire stared at the floor, jaw tight, sunlight-coloured hair falling forward like a curtain. Bennett appeared gutted suddenly, as if the equation between arrogance and humility had just balanced violently inside him. I didn't comprehend. You weren't supposed to, Claire murmured, finally looking up. That's why I departed. That's why I don't correct anyone when they call me rookie. Her tone didn't shatter, but the space did. The SEAL reached for her hand again, carefully this occasion, permission unspoken. If they survived that evening, he stated quietly, they survived because of you. She shook her head. No, they perished because I couldn't halt all of it. You halted enough of it for some of us to come home. Don't rewrite the battlefield. The pulse screen beeped in rhythm, softer now, and not crisis, but truth settling in. Bennett exhaled slowly. I'd like you to assist on his reconstruction, not as a caregiver, as whatever title you earned over there. Claire blinked. Titles, ranks, badges, patches, all the things she folded into a box beneath her bed years ago. She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She just murmured, I'll execute what I've always executed. I'll maintain him breathing. And finally, Bennett stepped aside, monitoring, not leading, because leadership had just changed hands. Claire turned back to the SEAL, pushing his hair away from his damp forehead like someone who'd executed it on a field cot, while mortars thundered too close. You're stable, she murmured. You're safe. He nodded, but his hand still held hers barely, just enough to state, don't vanish again. She stayed until his breathing steadied, until the screens exhaled with him. She stayed until the trauma hall remembered how to move without terror. Only then did she retreat. And as she reached the doorway, the entire emergency department examined her. Not with shock now, not with confusion, but with reverence. No more rookie, no more overlooked caregiver, no more soft background woman, just Claire Morgan, the medic who didn't perish, the medic who lived, the medic who carried ghosts so others didn't need to. She paused at the threshold. Bennett murmured the words first. Tone faint. We judged you without knowing your conflict. Claire didn't turn around. She simply stated, never judge a uniform or the silence that follows it. If you believe quiet heroes deserve to be seen, comment below. Never judge. The space settled into a strange, reverent quiet after the code reveal, but nothing about this moment felt calm inside Claire Morgan. She stood near the foot of the bed, limbs stiff to her sides, nails pressing into her palms to maintain her own pulse controlled. Navy SEAL Captain Marcus Kane, battle hard, crimson dry, half conscious just moments ago, now examined her with the variety of recognition individuals only display when they witness a ghost. Except the ghost was her. Marcus's breathing had steadied, but his gaze never departed her expression. They informed me you didn't make it out, he murmured. It's so quiet, the surgeons didn't hear it over the equipment beeps. They informed us no one did. Claire held the chart a little tighter, jaw working, throat burning with answers she didn't owe anyone. Not here, not tonight. Not in a brightly lit emergency department with interns staring like they just watched the floor drop open. Across the space, Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. Loud, defensive, rattled. Captain Kane, we require to continue assessing your neurological response. Nurse Morgan, retreat. Marcus didn't even blink at him. She stays. It wasn't a growl, it wasn't a plea, it was a command. One Patterson was not accustomed to receiving from anyone in scrubs. Claire didn't move closer, but she didn't retreat either. Patterson attempted again. Sir, she's not cleared to. She's my medic. Marcus cut in tone, but absolute, stamped in crimson, sand, and classified ink. If your squad desires me conscious, she stays in this space. The pulse screen ticked steadily, but the emergency department's energy shifted again. Less panic, more curiosity, or maybe something like guilt. The residents started murmuring among themselves, the same ones who had laughed when Claire tripped over the supply cart last week, who called her quiet mouse when she didn't bark commands like the others. Now, they couldn't even examine her in the gaze. Claire didn't desire their awe. She didn't desire their apologies. She desired to breathe without the invisible desert dust crushing her ribs. Marcus watched her, head slightly tilted, breathing shallow. "You're trembling," he stated quietly. She wasn't, not visibly, but he witnessed it anyway. He had always witnessed more than he stated. Always looked through noise, status, uniform tags, past rank. "I just require to update your chart," she stated, tone steady. "You're deflecting," he answered just as steadily. The space faded. For just a pulse, Claire was no longer surrounded by disinfectant and clipped commands. She was back in that blown-out limestone corridor, evening burning, copper in her mouth, hands cramping while she held pressure on his thoracic bleed. Praying command wasn't incorrect about the extraction duration. Then, his tone dragged her back. What occurred to the remainder of our squad? Claire. That name, not Nurse Morgan, not Miss, not Ma'am. Claire. The manner only 3 individuals in her lifetime had stated it. 2 of them were gone. She examined the clipboard. Not at him, not at anyone. "We are not discussing that here." Marcus exhaled slowly, even wounded. He understood her tone. A medical center corridor was no place to exhume deceased soldiers. Across the space, Dr. Thompson, young, cocky, always pushing for publications, spoke up. "This is ridiculous. I don't care who she patched up overseas. You're injured. You're in shock. You're misidentifying recollections and roles. Nurse Morgan is a second-year standard caregiver who Marcus turned his head, and somehow that tiny motion carried more threat than raised tones ever could. Thompson," he stated tone low. "In Helmand, I watched this second-year standard caregiver stitch 3 men with a flashlight between her teeth and sniper fire clipping stone inches from her skull. Don't disrespect what you don't understand." Thompson's mouth fell open, and for once, words didn't come. Claire closed her gaze for half a second. She hated this. Not the respect, the resurrection. The history had teeth, and once it smelled daylight, it bit. A soft rustle cut through the silence. The curtain being pulled aside. A man in a pressed medical center administration badge stepped in. Bald, stern, unblinking. "Captain Kane," he announced, "we've been notified of your arrival and require a private conversation." Marcus didn't even examine him. Not now. Claire frowned. "What department?" "Veterans Transition Oversight," he stated. "Too rapidly, too smooth." Marcus's gaze hardened. No. Incorrect badge, incorrect tone. Attempt again. The man paused, then smiled. A thin administrative smile that never reached his gaze. "Nurse Morgan," he stated, "we are also going to require you to accompany us. Your military experience appears to possess relevance." Her stomach tightened. Just like that, the atmosphere turned cold. This wasn't a routine check-in. This was interest. Custodial interest. "I'm not cleared for any government debrief," she stated evenly. "I'm discharged." "That," he stated, still smiling, is exactly why we require to speak." Marcus pushed himself up straighter, ignoring the intravenous tubes in agony. "She's not departing this space." "With respect," the man replied. "It isn't your call." 3 residents retreated. Patterson's pen clattered to the floor. Something about the man's tone reached the primal parts of every military-adjacent ear in the space. This was not a paperwork visit. Claire's pulse kicked harder. Not terror, instinct, training, the ancient variety, the buried variety. Marcus witnessed it in her expression. "Don't depart with him," he murmured. The man clasped his hands calmly. "You're making this harder than it requires to be. Nurse Morgan's presence is requested by a branch you possess no authority to question. He reached inside his coat slowly. Too slowly. Security stiffened. Thompson swallowed. The entire emergency department inhaled as though one set of lungs. Then he positioned a sealed envelope on the counter. Thick, stamped. No insignia, no sender, no clearance level, just her ancient name. Hospital Corpsman Second Class. Not Nurse Morgan. Your history, the man stated softly, never actually concluded. It simply waited for the correct casualty to wake up. Claire's fingertips tingled. The fluorescent illumination hummed. Somewhere down the corridor, a screen beeped steadily, grounding the existence. Marcus murmured, jaw clenched. Don't open it. But she already comprehended she would. She reached out, touched the border of the envelope, and froze. Because printed beneath her name were 3 words she had prayed she'd never witness again. Operation Shadowfall. It wasn't just classified. It was buried, erased, burned. And if it was resurfacing, then someone wasn't finished with her. Not by a long shot. Claire lifted the envelope. The man retreated. Marcus reached for her wrist. And the space, every physician, every intern, every equipment, held its breath as she slid her thumb beneath the seal. The paper inside wasn't paperwork. It was a list of names. She read the top one. Her throat closed. Captain Marcus Kane. Breathing. The next name, Corpsman Claire Morgan. Status reactivated. Before she could speak, security radios crackled to existence, requesting immediate lockdown, military liaison incoming. And in the ringing silence that followed, Claire finally understood. The history didn't return for closure. It returned for duty. And she wasn't finished yet. Screens screamed before the words even departed his mouth. Scarlet sirens, jagged lines, oxygen dipping. The seal's hand crushed Claire's wrist with surprising strength for a man barely hanging on. Don't permit anyone else touch me, he rasped. Then his gaze rolled back. For half a second, the whole emergency department froze. Then everything detonated into motion. Fibrillation? He's crashing, a resident bellowed. The attending lunged for the crash cart. Get her out of here. Claire didn't move. She stepped closer. Push back, she stated. Quiet, but it cut straight through the noise. Nobody listened. The attending shoved past her, already reaching for the paddles. Charge to 200. You execute that and you'll shred what's remaining of his conduction system. Claire snapped, hand shooting out to halt him. Examine the pattern. This isn't primary cardiac. He glared at her like she was insane. Caregiver, I am not going to argue with you while he perishes. He's not perishing. Claire fired back, gaze on the screen. He's drowning. That made one of the residents hesitate. Examine his neck veins, she added. Listen to the right lung. He's building pressure. You shock him now. You don't repair the real problem. You just fry the wiring while the house is still on fire. The attending faltered, only for a pulse. But it was enough. Claire grabbed the stethoscope from around his neck without asking, pressing it to the seal's torso, then moved swiftly to his side again. She tilted her head, listening not just to the sound, but to everything else. The rise, the fall, the strain. Right-sided tension physiology, she murmured, secondary to blast and fluid shift. He's not in a pure arrhythmia. His pulse is choking for space. Even if you're correct, the attending snapped. This isn't a conflict zone. We're not. Claire examined up, gaze cold and clear. We are tonight. The space went silent. She held out her hand. 18 gauge, second intercostal, high and mid-clavicular. Now, no one moved. Then, slowly, the seal's pulse line dipped again. The resident, who'd been watching her since the first code, stepped forward, ripping open a kit and slapping the needle into her palm. Here, the attending sputtered. You can't just... You shock him. You kill him, Claire stated. You decompress him. You grant him a chance." She didn't wait for authorization. She cleaned, aligned, and drove the RCU, the needle home with the variety of fluid, terrifyingly precise motion that only came from executing it in places where there was no backup and no second chances. For a breathless second, nothing occurred. Then, the screen line shivered, flattened, and climbed. The seal's torso rose in a deeper, cleaner breath. His pigment shifted by a shade, just enough for trained gaze to witness. The resident exhaled, pressure creeping back. He's responding. A hush fell over the space, so complete Claire could feel the buzz of the fluorescent illumination through it. Nobody argued now. They worked. She issued commands like she was back with her squad. Calm, precise, unshakable, fluids regulated, oxygen titrated, rhythm monitored. Every physician in the space moved around her. Not because she outranked them on paper, but because in that moment they all comprehended exactly who the real lead was. Within minutes, the SEAL's vitals climbed from catastrophic to dangerous, then from dangerous to fragile. His breathing evened out. The sirens went from screaming to murmuring. Only then did Claire retreat, torso rising and falling like she'd just run miles without moving at all. The attending stared at her, all the pigment drained from his expression. What did you just execute?" he murmured. Claire swallowed, suddenly aware of every pair of gaze pinned on her scrubs, on her badge, on the tiny registered nurse that suddenly felt hilariously inadequate. "You call it a decompression with hemodynamic salvage," she stated softly. "We called it Tuesday evening." The SEAL stirred. His gaze fluttered open just a crack, finding her like there was nobody else in the space. His tone was a rough scrape of gravel. Doc Morgan. Her breath caught. She hadn't heard that name in years. Not here. Not in a place with coffee cups and volunteer vests and painted barriers. The attending cleared his throat quietly this occasion. "Let's grant them a minute." For the first occasion since the ambulance entrance burst open, nobody argued about her staying. The squad filtered out murmuring, casting backward glances that held something very different than the condescension she'd grown accustomed to. Respect, confusion, something in between. The entrance clicked shut. It was just her and the man on the bed and the ghosts. His lips were cracked. She dipped a swab, moistening them gently. "You're not supposed to be awake yet," she stated, attempting for lightness and missing by a mile. He managed the smallest smile. "You were never good at following rules either." She huffed out a laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. Silence settled, thick and heavy. Finally, he murmured, "You disappeared." "So did you." His digits twitched as if attempting to reach for something he couldn't name. "They informed us you perished," he choked out. "They stated Doc Morgan went down with the remainder of the squad. We carved your name into a barrier, Claire. We toasted you at every reunion. I've been saluting a ghost for 5 years." She swallowed hard. "I thought it was better that manner," she stated. "For who?" he asked. She didn't answer, because she didn't comprehend anymore. A soft knock broke the moment. The entrance opened just enough for a figure in a neatly pressed uniform to step through. Not tactical, administrative, the variety of ironed perfection that always made her throat tighten. "Ms. Morgan," the officer stated, tone careful. Claire straightened, all the warmth draining out of her expression, replaced by the cool neutrality she'd learned the hard manner. "Just Nurse Morgan," she replied. His gaze flicked to the SEAL, then back to her. "We both comprehend that's not quite true." The SEAL attempted to push himself up. "Sir, with respect, at ease, Captain," the officer stated. "You're under medical care, which, from the report I just read." His gaze returned to Claire. "You're fortunate to still be in requirement of." Claire folded her limbs, the paper gown rustling faintly as the SEAL shifted. "What do you desire?" she asked. "Officially." He lifted a folder, thin but heavy in the manner only classified things could be. To inform you that your file is being unsealed for internal review, and to apologize that anyone in this building ever thought you were just a rookie." Unofficially, the seal rasped. The officer's shoulders softened. "Unofficially," he stated quietly, "I came to inform you that you didn't fail him." Claire's stomach dropped. "Don't," she murmured, "don't state his name." "I won't," the officer replied. But I will state this. The man who perished that evening didn't perish because of you. He perished because he chose to stay in that kill zone to buy you duration to transport the others out. That's not speculation. That's on the after action. He commanded you to depart. You followed it. You didn't abandon him. You obeyed him. Her throat clenched. She'd replayed that evening 1,000 occasions in her consciousness, always with the same verdict. If I had been better, faster, stronger, he'd be breathing. Now, here was a stranger stating the thing she'd never granted herself authorization to believe. The seal watched her, gaze shining in a manner that had nothing to execute with painkillers. "Informed you," he murmured. "You rescued us, all of us. He'd knock your helmet off if he heard you arguing with that." The officer stepped closer to the bed, then examined the captain. "Can you sit up with assistance?" he grunted. Claire moved on instinct, supporting him with gentle hands, adjusting tubes and leads, executing the simple, practical things that had always felt safe. The officer retreated, leaving a clear line of sight between them. "Captain," he stated, "you requested to address the personnel when you were stable. They're outside. They can hear through the glass." Claire's head snapped toward the window. Beyond the blind, she could just make out shapes. White coats, scrubs, silhouettes clustered in the corridor, pretending they weren't listening. A flush of embarrassment shot up her neck. "They don't require, they execute." The seal cut in. He took a breath, teeth clenched, then forced his left limb, his functional limb, up to his torso. Slow, deliberate. He straightened as much as the intravenous tubes would allow. And then, in front of every physician who'd rolled their gaze at her badge, every colleague who'd called her sweet instead of skilled. What? Every resident who'd joked that she was too quiet for trauma. Yeah. And he granted her a complete formal battlefield-grade salute. It was shaky. It was imperfect. It was the most devastatingly powerful thing she'd witnessed in years. "Ma'am," he stated, tone rough but clear, projecting enough to carry through the glass. "For the record, this medical centre did not rescue my existence tonight." Claire's pulse stuttered. He didn't break eye contact. "You executed," he finished. Again, silence crashed over the space. Outside, no one moved. No one murmured. They just watched as a man built by conflict saluted a caregiver they'd refused to witness. Slowly, Claire's hand lifted. Not quite a salute. Not quite a refusal. Something in between. An acknowledgement that they were both still here. The officer cleared his throat, gaze glistening more than his rank would ever admit. "For what it's worth," he stated softly, "Command got this incorrect the first occasion. We're attempting not to make the same mistake twice. There's a reactivation track open to you. Advisory, training, whatever you desire to call it, or you can stay here, build an existence in the quiet. But either manner," he nodded toward the entrance, "they'll never examine you the same again." Claire let out a slow breath. "I don't require them to worship me," she stated. "I comprehend," the seal replied, "but you deserve for them to witness you." For the first occasion in a long duration, she permitted herself imagine a future that didn't revolve around fleeing away from who she'd been or pretending she'd never existed. Maybe she could be both. Claire Morgan, registered nurse. Doc Morgan, ghost medic. Two halves of the same woman, finally permitted to stand in the same space. She squeezed the seal's hand gently. "Rest," she murmured. "You're safe." His gaze drifted shut, not from sedation, but from something softer. "Trust." Claire stepped into the corridor. Every head turned. For a pulse, nobody spoke. Then the attending, the same man who attempted to shove her aside stepped forward. His tone was Nurse Morgan, he stated. I owe you an apology and about 3 decades of humility training. A few individuals chuckled weakly. He swallowed. If you're willing, he added, I desire you to assist us rebuild our trauma protocols. Clearly, there are things you comprehend that we don't. Claire's instinct was to shrink back, to state no, to disappear. Instead, she heard her own tone state, if we execute this, we execute it together. Every tone, every badge, no more assuming the quiet ones don't comprehend anything. The resident who'd handed her the needle earlier nodded fiercely. Deal. The corridor loosened, something uncurled in her torso. She walked away from the space. Not smaller, not invisible, but solid, witnessed, real. And for the first occasion since she'd come home, the recollections of sand and rotors and distant gunfire didn't feel like weights chained to her. They felt like roots. Days passed in the medical centre after that evening. Claire Morgan continued her shifts, but something fundamental had altered. The whispers in the break space changed. No longer were they dismissive murmurs about the quiet rookie who barely spoke. Now they were questions, genuine curiosity, respect masked as casual conversation. Where did she train? What missions was she on? How many lives had she actually rescued? She didn't answer most of them. She simply continued executing what she'd always executed, maintaining individuals breathing, one shift at a time. But the emergency department staff noticed other things too. The manner she moved during codes, the way her hands never trembled even when everyone else's did, the quiet authority in her tone when she issued commands during critical moments. Dr. Bennett approached her one afternoon in the supply space. Morgan, he stated, clearing his throat awkwardly, I've been thinking about your offer. About rebuilding our protocols. She glanced up from the inventory sheet she'd been checking. And? I'd like to start next week, if you're still willing. For the first occasion in months, Claire felt something warm spread through her torso. Not pride exactly, but belonging. I'm willing, she stated softly. That evening, as her shift concluded, she found Marcus Kane waiting in the recovery wing. He was dressed in standard attire now, limb in a sling, but healing well. You're still here, she stated, surprised. Waited for you, he replied. Wanted to state something before I ship back out. She folded her limbs, waiting. You rescued more than my existence that evening, Claire. You rescued the individual I thought I'd lost when we left you behind in that desert. Her throat tightened. You didn't leave me behind. I ordered you to depart. And I've regretted following that command every single day since. The corridor around them hummed with the ordinary sounds of a medical centre at evening. Footsteps, distant conversations, equipment beeping steadily, but between them there was only silence and understanding. I'm not going back, she stated finally. To active duty. I've found my battlefield here. He nodded slowly. I comprehend, but if you ever change your consciousness... I won't, she stated, but her tone was gentle. He reached out with his functional hand and she grasped it. Not as soldier and medic, but as 2 individuals who'd survived the unthinkable and found their manner back to the illumination. Take care of yourself, Captain, she murmured. You too, Doc. She watched him walk away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until they faded completely. Then she turned back toward the emergency department, toward the existence she'd chosen, toward the individuals who now witnessed her for who she truly was. If you're still here listening to this, I desire to ask you something. Every day, someone like Claire walks past us quiet, overlooked, carrying more than we'll ever comprehend. If you believe individuals like that deserve to be witnessed, if you believe the word rookie never tells the whole story, please subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to this channel. Drop a comment that states, never judge. So, I comprehend you made it to the conclusion, because as long as you're here listening, these stories and the quiet champions inside them will never be forgotten. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.